Hello, football family. Welcome back into Huddle It Up Films. I have Jordan today. We have a lot of ground to cover, so we're going to get right into it. But I have to ask you, Jordan, how you're doing, and can you tell people very quickly about where they can find your work?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on again, Jason. You guys can check us out at Raven Sit Room. I'm on Twitter, and we're at Film Study Ravens. I do a podcast with Gabe at Gabe Fergie, and we're checking out each of the games. We try and break down a little film and talk about what we're seeing on the field. So, would love to see you there.
Great show. I pumped it the first time you were on, and I encourage people to listen because, like I said, I like the way you guys talk about the X's and O's and the strategy of the game. It's something that I don't get into as much on my channel, so I like listening to your guys' perspective on that. We're here today to talk about the new additions of the Ravens, and we're going to touch on them, basic thoughts. But let's start with the O line, specifically the right side of the offensive line, because Bozeman's move to center is kind of a separate subject. But what about how the Ravens address the right side of the line? And I noticed that there's a little bit different philosophy behind that this year.
Yeah, it was a big shift, and it was, I didn't think the loss of Marshall Yanda was going to be as significant as the trickle down effect of what it ended up being on the line. And, I didn't think our center play was as bad as it seemed, but it really seemed like the Ravens wanted veterans to come in and take over some of these spots. And who knows if they're going to be there all year, if they're going to stay healthy and whatnot. But I think what the Ravens really learned last year was that they needed guys that could step in, that had some experience, that weren't going to kind of make some really colossal mistakes in big moments. And so, Tyree Phillips has got a ton of upside, and I love him, and I'm glad he's a Raven. And I think long term, he's a great part and a big guy to be on the team. But I think the mistakes that you might see from Zeitler and Villanueva are going to be significantly less impact overall. And I think the thing that the Ravens really dug in on in terms of what they tried to add to the offensive line here was not to allow some of these what seemed to be like massive negative plays. And there were just kind of massive negative plays last year that just like ended drives. I think in a lot of ways you could argue ended the Buffalo playoff game. Just some, and I think there's some questions now. I've seen some film from some other guys that suggest that Phillips didn't blow that play as bad as I thought. But when you bring in the right combination of veterans that have seen a lot of this stuff before, they know what they're looking at. That seemed to be the priority of what the Ravens were really looking to do.
Which is different from last year because we went with the youth movement. We had a bunch of guys drafted middle to late rounds, and we said, hey, one of these guys is going to pan out. Brought in Fluker, a little bit different player than Zeitler. I don't think that they intended to start Fluker because, quite frankly, he didn't start the opening of the season when there was no training camp and limited basic off-season action. Sorry for stumbling over that, but one thing you said kind of struck me, and that's the right guard itself in Zeitler, because the right guard has got to assist with the center. He's also got to assist with the right tackle. So having a veteran, I think, in Zeitler in that spot, it brings me a lot of comfort because when he's working in a tandem with the guys next to him, he's played that same position his whole life. Even though they're new guys, I feel like that this line could gel quickly because of Zeitler specifically. And, of course, Villanueva on the other side brings experience, even though that's going to be a new position for him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he transitions to right tackle and making sure that that's okay. And I know, obviously a career of being on one side, you're mirroring your actions. And so that does make it a little tough. But I think that Lamar Jackson alleviates a lot of that pain at right tackle. I think he alleviated a lot of some of the shortcomings that Orlando Brown had, and I think Orlando Brown is a fantastic player. But I think when you get a little bit of slack because you got a guy that can just dart out around the edge, even if you're losing a few times, I think Villanueva is going to look a lot better with a quarterback that actually has two functional legs underneath it this year.
It's true, and I don't know if you noticed this when I watched Villanueva, Jordan, but his jump set when he just comes out of his stance and gets on the defensive end was much more impressive than I thought for a guy with his wear and tear and age. So he can get on you very quickly, which is different, from taking the drop step approach, which a veteran, it seems like they get slower over age. But basically, Villanueva can come out of his stance and make first contact. And to your point, with a quarterback like Lamar, that's really all he needs in that. What about the wide receivers that we added with Watkins, Bateman, and Wallace?
Yeah, you know, the wide receiver is a really interesting thing for the Ravens. I think there are two ways to look at it. The first one is that the Ravens, and everybody's talking about this, so this isn't just us, but the Ravens have decided to actually invest in the wide receiver position, and they're gonna do it with cap space. They did that by signing Watkins. They're gonna do it with draft picks. You've seen it now with Hollywood Brown, with Duvernay, with Bateman, with Wallace. I mean, this is not your Ozzie Newsome classic Ravens, you know, in terms of taking one or two wide receivers every couple years and then hoping one of them pans out, or going out and signing a veteran. They want to build in-house. They want to build a talented group together. I didn't even name Miles Boykin. Who knows what's going to happen with that? But I think what you see in Watkins and Bateman in particular is really interesting. I think in Watkins, you get a guy that's a veteran that Lamar can kind of count on and can kind of coach him up in games and in situations. Watkins has made some really huge catches and some really big moments. I don't think that can be understated for what this Ravens team needs. Brown has done that, and I think that he's actually a little underrated about how effective he's been in big moments. But Watkins has been there. He's done it in critical moments, and he immediately commands the respect and the attention of Lamar in that sense. And I think in some ways, Lamar needed another guy that did demand his respect in terms of catching the ball. And that wasn't Boykin and that wasn't Duvernay last year. And I like both of those guys. And I think that there's still a chance that they've got some upside. But Watkins brings kind of a more commanding presence to what I think Lamar is going to have to do. And you hear this phrase wide receiver diva, but in some ways you want a guy that's going to demand he get that attention, get that look, and get the ball. On the flip side of that, you get Bateman, who is just, from everything that we've seen now, is just this phenomenal route runner, and he's smooth and he's crisp. He's willing to go over the middle. He's got a little bit more wiggle than it seems like that you might expect from a guy like him. And I think Lamar is going to build some trust really quickly with him. If Bateman's able to show the route running prowess and kind of that smoothness that we've seen, I think he's going to see opportunities, limited opportunities, but opportunities in this offense in one-on-one situations. Brown is going to demand that safety coverage over the top. Watkins is going to kind of get that X focus, in the sense that I think teams are going to want to try and take him away early. And if that happens, and Bateman can put a double move on, or he can be as smooth as we've seen from him, I think there's some real opportunity for him to make some high impact catches. I don't think we're going to see a huge year out of him. We're not going to see 800 plus yards. I'd be surprised if we see that from him, but I think we're going to see some really big third downs from him in big situations where he's the guy that Lamar has to look to, and he's going to make some big plays.
Yeah, Bateman's workload is a mystery to me, because I could see it break a couple of different ways, and I could actually see some big plays from Bateman. And the reason I say that, Jordan, is you've seen how teams have stacked the middle against Lamar. They know that's where he wants to go. Well, as you mentioned, Bateman can run those slant routes over the middle. I have a video up I encourage you to watch of Bateman's routes, basically catches by routes run. And the slant portion of that video is longer than any other. And then what he does is he sells that slant and gets open and has a really good feel for where the other players, the linebackers, safeties may be, that he can cut that up and sell it into a sluggo, slant and go. So I think Bateman's actually going to hit on a couple of those this year, because he's so dependable with the slant. But early on, I agree with you about Sammy Watkins. I think that's an instant chemistry thing for Lamar. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he's more involved in the offense than people think. And then philosophically, going back to what you opened with, it really is such a difference. And I think that the Ravens have to keep drafting wide receivers, because we're going to struggle recruiting or paying. It's an expensive position. So you got T. Martin, you got Coach Williams. What better way than to draft and groom your own? And how do you think those coaches are going to affect the passing game, maybe the passing concepts? Do you have any thoughts on how the passing game could change due to the coaches?
I mean, we've already seen these coaches, in the videos at least that have been released, making a huge impact. Just the coaching itself of what they're doing, the attention that they're giving to the wide receivers, and kind of what they're doing to just coach them up naturally, I think is very welcome. And that is not to put down or criticize any of the prior coaches. We haven't seen videos like this from wide receiver coaches in the Ravens before. So maybe we're just hearing about it now, but you've got to be optimistic when you see that. As for your question about, how we think it's going to impact on the field, I think fans might think it's going to have more of an impact than it actually is in one sense, right? Because, and I'm among the fans that have been clamoring that there are times where there are critical plays and at critical down and distances that just don't make any sense in terms of what the Ravens have run in terms of route combinations and approaches. And I think that it's one of those things where I think 90% of the time the Ravens passing offense makes a lot of sense and is well designed and well executed. And so for those who are saying, well, you could do a lot worse than Greg Roman, I agree in that sense. But that 10%, especially in the NFL, and let's even if you reduce that down to like, let's say 7 or 3%, that percentage of plays in a game makes or breaks a game, right? That in that 3% of plays is the Hollywood Brown touchdown in the Cleveland Browns game, right? Where they sense that everybody's collapsing in and Hollywood breaks it out and Lamar knows where he's going with that, right? So if you have the right coaching in the right situations and you are ready for those big moments and you've got the right plays set up in those spots, I think that's the place. It's going to make a difference 2 or 3 times maximum in a game. But I think it could pay huge dividends in terms of extending drives, et cetera. Because the Ravens, I mean, the thing that really has held this Ravens offense back is just a couple extra first downs per game. They are a churn and burn machine because they can put it on the ground, and when they get rolling on a drive, they are really hard to stop. They're gonna, if they can extend 2 more drives a game by 2 more first downs, they're just going to be an incredible team to handle because of their ability to stay on the field.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Well, I mean, you're definitely right. Those extra 2 first downs gives us a chance to reset. And one thing we've seen with this team is it's able to sustain long drives. So if you get that third downs that you're talking about, there's a good high chance. I mean, we scored on 50% of our drives around the last 2 years. Had that stat on your first video. There's a good chance we're going to score if we get that first down, or maybe it's the second first down. Whenever those third down plays come into play. And I'm hoping that Coach Williams and Coach Martin, I mean, I actually think that Coach Williams is excellent with the wide receivers themselves, but I want to see what Coach T. Martin does to the passing game overall and what kind of influence he has on when plays are called or maybe what the go-to plays are on third down. Because I have a feeling that he's going to have his, I don't know, handful of plays, say, that Greg Roman's going to incorporate and say, hey, when it's third down in this, we're using T. Martin's play. So I can't wait to see what those plays are and how that affects it. Are there any dark horses on this team? Like, I'm thinking the second year guys that kind of got robbed out of a full off season last year. Is there anybody out of that group or anywhere else on the team that you could see having a surprise impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Ravens, I mean, they always draft well, but they're going to have a group of sophomore players that are going to be high impact. J.K. Dobbins is going to be a high impact player this year. There's just no getting around that. We don't have to spend any extra time on that. He is going to be a top 7 running back in the league this year. Draft him on your fantasy team. He's going to be worth wherever you take him. But 2 other kind of sets of guys that I'd look at. One is Madubuike. I think that he's going to be a real force. I think getting in the locker room or getting in the weight room, getting a little bit more strength. He's already very nimble and got great speed. He's the perfect fit as that kind of like 3rd, 4th defensive lineman in terms of what the Ravens need. I think he could end up being a really big X factor. A lot like Haloti Ngata was in that one year where it was kind of Suggs, Dumervil, Ngata, and McPhee in that kind of rush 4 set. I think Madubuike can be that kind of equivalent guy amongst those 4, depending on what we get from it. And then inside linebacker, I mean, I love what I've been seeing from Rob Ryan, what he's been doing with, how he's been coaching these guys up, especially trying to get Queen to be more physical, getting them all to be more physical. They built a whole new contraption for that thing. But I think that's where we get a big opportunity for growth between Queen and Harrison, is to see if we see really improved inside linebacker play. And if those 2 guys play up to their top end of the potential, this defense is going to be really hard to defend or really hard to move the ball on, because even outstanding of a pass rush, they're just in coverage or stopping the run. There's going to be nowhere else to go.
Well, very well said. I'm going to actually up you on one thing, and that is that I believe you can put Madubuike safely in the Dobbins category. Like, he picked it up so quickly, Jordan, and you could just see him as a different, more confident player. By the end of last year, he was destroying things in the Titans game. So I'm as confident in Madubuike as I am in JK. It's as strange as that sounds because they play 2 different positions and the numbers fall quite different. But yeah, I think Madubuike's got that kind of impact. Well, Jordan,
I'm ready to see it.
Thank you so much again, man. I appreciate you. Football is family. We'll have you back on again.
All right. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Thank you.